Hey everybody, welcome to the Tom Rowland Podcast. We're brought to you today by brite. brite is the maker of some awesome products that keep your boat, your RV, anything you have clean and sparkling and keep your investment pristine. Today, we have a special podcast. We have started this series called Anglers Unite, and that is with our partner Burnewiin. Tom Anderson is the owner of Burnewiin. They make amazing products for your boat. You've seen us use them on Saltwater Experience. What Tom wants to do is to help all anglers understand what the threats to sport fishing are and how we can unite to come up with solutions and actually move forward in a way that we can all continue to fish. That's what we all really want to do. There are serious threats to sport fishing. There are groups out there, policies out there, other things that threaten access, that threaten the ability to go into certain areas, like the right whale issue that could close off massive areas. It's good to know that as a recreational fisherman, as a recreational sport fishing guide, as somebody that makes a living in fishing, or just somebody that likes to just go fishing one time a year, you actually have a voice in Washington that is looking out for your best interest. And your best interest is basically the ability to continue to fish. And the ability, fishing in so many places is a privilege, it's not a right. And we need to keep that always in the back of our head, that we want to maintain this privilege or right. But mostly what we want to be able to do is just continue to fish. You have a voice in Washington, and that is ASA. There's something going on right now called the ASA Sportfishing Summit. And we are going to be joining Larry Phillips and Tom Anderson, who are on site attending this meeting, and they're going to give us the inside scoop about what's being talked about, what the most important issues are, and how we're working towards solutions to protect our rights to fish, to protect our access to fish, or to protect the habitat or the species of fish that we like to catch. A lot of people know about this meeting, but have no idea what takes place there. I've known about that this meeting takes place every single year, but I don't know what they talk about there, even me that makes a living in fishing. The other event that ASA does hold, which a lot of people know a lot more about, is an event called ICAST, and that's where all the manufacturers get together and show their goods for the entire year. It's a fisherman's dream come true. You can go there and you can see all your favorite fishing tackle and what's going to be sold this year, and the technology and the advancements and all that. But this other event, the ASA Sportfishing Summit, is something different. That's where they talk about policies. It's where they talk about the threats and what we're going to do about it. So let's hear from Larry and Tom right now.
I'm here as part of the Government Affairs Committee, representing the interest of West Coast saltwater sport fishing. I'm an industry member. I'm an ASA member as a company. We exhibit at ICAST, and most people are probably familiar with ICAST, which is ASA's main event each year. It's an industry show. This is held in the fall, and it's where the entire industry, which is all the manufacturers' products that you use for your sport fishing endeavors, get together to try to strategize and how figure out how we can have a collective voice, as I put it, swimming upstream, kind of drawing a parallel to the salmon, right? With government agencies, with policymakers, with the government itself, and have a collective representation at the table in conversations that affect the ability for all of us to go out and enjoy what we do, which is fishing. Larry here next to me, he's here on the West Coast. I'll let him introduce himself later. But Larry kind of got me involved with this program, and I'm really excited to be here. It's been an incredible week, and it's amazing to me the number of issues that we all face as sport fishermen. Most of us in the industry, yes, we're making products for fishing. It's our business, but it's also our passion. So I'm here both as a fisherman as well as in the industry, trying to be part of the solution and have us have a little bit of a more collective voice. There's a lot of organizations we all belong to regionally or locally as fishermen that we support: CCA, Captains for Clean Water, local fishing chapters, BASS, NPAA if you're a professional angler. And we have a lot of different interests, but really when it comes down to it, we all face the same struggles. We are all working to access resources that other organizations are as well. Commercial fishing has a stake here, and we need collective representation. So, Tom, this is part of you and I creating this Anglers United segment of your podcast that we want to try to help your listeners and our customers and anglers all around the country understand how we can do a better job of having a seat at the table. So I'm excited about moving forward. I think this introduction today is just about generating some awareness for the fact that this event exists, this organization exists, and it's where everybody in the industry collects input from users and takes it upstream and lobbies on our behalf as sport fishermen. So that's why we're here, and it's a neat event. You should probably be here next year.
Yeah, I would like to be there. This is something that I wasn't really aware of. I mean, I'm aware that the event takes place. I'm not really aware, like probably many of the people listening right now, of what actually takes place there and what goes on and how important that is to the future of sport fishing. Whether that's, I mean, we're going to talk about what the kind of issues are that you're talking about. But let's bring Larry into this. Larry Phillips, you're the Pacific Fisher. Sorry, that's easy for me to say. Pacific Fisheries Policy Director. Tell me what that entails.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and thanks for letting me join you guys today. So I cover fisheries policy from a science standpoint, from a policy standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, really at the state and federal level on the west coast of the U.S., really from Alaska to California. So I'm one of 20 staff that work for ASA. Our government affairs unit is pretty lean. There's 6 of us there that cover really the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. I cover that, but we cover the council processes. There's 8 councils under Magnuson-Stevens. That's where our federal regulations are made, and we advocate on behalf of the recreational fishing industry to ensure that we have healthy fisheries and meaningful access to them. So as you can imagine, a lot going on, but we're fortunate today to be here on the West Coast. Our annual Sport Fishing Summit happens, annually, but it's strategically located in areas that we can attract our members to, and we can highlight some of the issues that we're facing. And certainly we face a lot of them here on the West Coast.
Yeah, and just to set that stage, just Tom, by the way, next year the Sport Fishing Summit about this time of year will be held in Key West. Last year it was
nice.
in Destin, Florida, travels around. And Larry, just to kind of clarify, Larry has 5 counterparts that serve similar roles. So Larry handles the entire West Coast, kind of taking issues up for the ASA. And then there's a Gulf, a Southeast, an Atlantic, and then a freshwater equivalent of Larry that serve those regions and then try to bring those issues up collectively on the national.
They have one person for all freshwater?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that seems like a wildly varied thing, from a trout stream to a bass lake to
right.
big impoundments, rivers. That seems like a lot of work for one person.
I agree, Tom. However, when you think about it, a lot of the freshwater fishing has less probably federal involvement than some of these migratory fisheries in the saltwater. Larry or we on the West Coast deal with other countries, right? We're trying to manage with Canada. Salmon swim out in the ocean and go all over the place. We don't even really know where yet. So, but I agree that when you say freshwater fishing, I can't even imagine the variety of issues there are there.
Right. So this year, you guys, this event started a couple of days ago, Tuesday. Is that correct?
Tuesday through Friday.
So you've had, and so what does the schedule look like so far? Like, how much time have you spent in seminars or in presentations or things like that?
Well, so I'll speak as a first timer here. Tuesday was kind of gathering day, so a lot of people traveled here Tuesday morning or maybe Monday. Wednesday and Thursday are all day affairs. There's breakfast event. There's sessions all morning, some of which are educational. There was some speakers from different industries. Recreational Boat and Fishing Foundation gave some presentations for information yesterday. There's some presentations on marketing, how to access resources that are available to all the industry association members. And then there's the sort of more business efforts that relate to policy making and these government affair issues. So we have to leave in a little bit to go back into another general session where there's actual business conducted on government affairs that we're working on and all these fishing issues we're discussing.
Understood. So out of all that, this year, are there things that are obviously of interest to everyone there? Threats that are more pressing than they have been in years past? What are the subjects that have been discussed so far?
I mean, I could jump in a little bit
Yeah.
to start us off here. I mean, there's when you think about our industry in general, there's a lot happening, but ASA has been around for 90 years, and one of the things that we've been steadfast supporters of is the excise tax, the collection of our the tax that's attached to recreational fishing equipment that is divvied out to the states to manage fisheries in a way that improves the abundance and really just continues to provide meaningful access to us. So that's a really big deal. One of the real challenges in recent times is this move to online and online sales. And really what we want to make sure we're doing is that it's a level playing field. So all of the folks that buy equipment, the stuff they're buying is also subject to that tax, and that's a problem right now. You can imagine with some of the online platforms that are not, Amazon and all the other ones. So we're working hard to make sure that we are not only making sure that the playing field is level for our manufacturers and our retail folks, but also that the states are realizing the benefits of those dollars, because that's really critical to how they maintain operation in fisheries.
Tom, this is a subject that's probably a whole show, because I'm guessing, as I didn't, way long ago, most of your listeners probably don't even know much about this excise tax they pay on fishing gear, but that's probably a whole nother subject. But
we've covered it a few times as it applies
archery
to hunting and fishing. But if you want to just give an overview of what it is, that would be great.
Well, what I was going to suggest in this short format as an introductory thing is I just go down and I'll list the topics that we're covering this week in these sessions you were asking about. The excise tax is one of them. Issues around regulations regarding lead fishing tackle is an issue we discussed yesterday. The De Minimis Act, which has to do with what level of import do we charge duties on for imported products. The PFAS issue, which is, chemicals and things. California salmon issues, Pacific Northwest salmon issues, the California 30 by 30 implementation, which has to do with preservation of shoreline and water areas. There's nearshore rockfish assessments. There's the Gulf of Alaska king salmon ESA petition. On the East Coast, we're dealing with the Atlantic striped bass issues, the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council items, which is a whole list of items, the red snapper issue, which you're very familiar with, the Southeast regional issues. On the freshwater side, they're addressing today the Aquatic Invasive Species Commission and their asks, the Mississippi River Basin fishery issues, which there are many, forward-facing sonar and how that impacts different things that people have questions about, and then a whole bunch of state legislative and policy issues throughout the country. Then we get to other issues with the Everglades, with the coral, there's just so many issues. So the point being that you could almost see how this meeting and this Sport Fishing Summit could take up 2-3 weeks.
Sure.
With the issues that we all face. And that's where, so sport fishermen, whether they realize it or not, wherever they are actually up against all these issues. And we're trying to be champions of the cause and sort of have representation so that we get a fair shake when all these things are being considered.
So let's talk about that for a second. That would be in terms of the government, right? So when all
Correct.
these things are being considered, what's going on there is that this would be some sort of a lobby in favor of sport fishing concerns. Is that correct?
Correct. And Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the outcomes of all this work is an official publication that gets presented to legislators, Congress, and the president's office, especially now with a change potentially in administration, to where it says, hey, this is this entire industry's position on these issues is one of the outcomes, right?
Yeah, not necessarily one of the outcomes of this specific summit, but what we do is we make sure that when there is a change of administration, like we're going to see here soon, 19 days, I believe, that we provide them with a summary of the issues that are important to our industry, the issues that we've been working on closely. Because as you know, Tom, the challenges are many. They have potential to significantly impact, both negative and positively impact our industry, and we want to make sure that as we enter into those, this new leadership and this new administration, that they're aware of these issues, and so we're working hard at that level as well. That's essentially the outcome of all these conversations we're having as we whittle it down.
So as it applies to the people that are listening to this podcast right now, it's one thing to bring awareness to these. It's another thing to have lobby. But part of what Tom and I are hoping to accomplish with this Anglers Unite is that there are actual solutions that if we can raise awareness around these issues, that people can understand how important they are, that a king salmon issue is important to a Florida fisherman as water quality is to a northeastern fisherman.
That's right.
That it all anglers have a voice. And together, our voice is very strong. Fractured and regional and small is very weak. So, is that something that's being discussed about? If you come up with a summary of these issues and where we stand as an industry on these particular issues, I'm sure that that's a very difficult thing to do because everybody has an opinion of what should happen. But ultimately, there will be one position on an issue, I guess. How important is it that just the recreational angler, the person that just likes to fish, a couple of days a month, a couple of weeks a year, I don't know. How important is it that they understand these issues and unite around them?
I think it's critical. And Tom and I talk all the time. There's a lot of us out there, right? We have millions and millions of anglers across, tens of millions of anglers across the nation that participate. And like you said, some of them participate infrequently, but the quality of opportunity that they have is directly related to the advocacy that we can provide. It is critical that we find ways to align and push from the same side. The ability for us to be effective, it's so easy for the regulatory process to marginalize an individual or a small group, as you put it. If we can align ourselves to the point of being recognized as both really important, that people making decisions have to think about, what does the recreational industry think, or what does the coalition think? And from my lens, that's really the avenue for success for us. ASA has a platform. We have our Keep America Fishing platform, where we have alerts for advocacy, and there's a variety of different topics that have come up over time. But that, from my lens, is really critical to our long-term success as an industry, and making sure that policies are developed that are important to us and support recreational fishing long-term.
So as it comes to this industry, sport fishing as a whole, I'm sure that the ASA, they do an incredible job of having stats. I'm sure that they have relayed some of these current stats to you at this meeting. Do you have an idea of a recent financial estimate of what this industry is worth and why that would be important to whoever the new administration is going to be, and why they should be considering hunters and fishermen, specifically fishermen, for this particular podcast? How big is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I should have had that in front of me here. My memory is telling me it's about $150 billion industry annually to across the nation. That's all fisheries, and so you can, as you suppose that, and it's variable depending on what location you're at. We're in San Diego right now, and it's billions of dollars of recreational associated recreational dollars come into this community for people that come here to fish from all over the world. Bluefin tuna, for example, which is a great success story right now. But it is paramount
Sure.
to many of the economies of coastal communities and that we have meaningful and healthy fisheries so that we can realize the benefits of those.
And Tom, to your point, I think that's
Yeah.
probably one of the most
Certainly.
valuable mechanisms we can use to lobby at the federal level, because other industries,
Yeah.
commercial fishing, let's say, they have very easy numbers to put together because they're all about the revenue, right, and the number of jobs. So that there's very easy numbers there. We're so fragmented and diverse that it's hard. So to your point, yesterday, one of the presentations was about just that, which is, hey, how many fishermen do we have and fisher people do we have in the country? Are we gaining or losing? We happen to be gaining right now, but there's just some attrition as well. And they look at it from that standpoint. What is the economic impact? The harder thing to discuss at the federal level is, well, what's the social and human impact and benefit of fishing? You know, one of the first things people said in this meeting yesterday was, why do you fish? And people said, family. It's people's passion. It's like, it generates happiness in the family. Well, that's a hard thing to just put as a line item to say at the federal level, well, you should do this because it supports people's families and mental well-being, right? So the financial part is probably the most leverage that we have, which is huge.
Right.
Tom, if you go to our website, on the ASA website, we've spent a lot of resources, time, and energy and money on exactly what you just said on quantifying the economic impact, and it's by state and it's by district. So it's one of the tools we have to go to the legislature or of each state or go to Congress and really tell our story about how important recreational fishing is to the economy of each state. And
Well, it certainly does get someone's attention.
absolutely.
You know, you can be saying this has, you know, this could be 30,000 jobs in your area. That's going to get a senator's attention or something like that. But when you walk in and you can say this is a $150 billion industry and you are not paying attention to what is important to us so that we can continue this. That's a good way to get in someone's attention.
Absolutely.
For sure. And ASA has always done a very, very good job with those stats. I mean, I'm sure that they have a whole team every year updating that and trying to come up with the most reliable and legitimate stats that they possibly can, because that's where you ultimately hang your hat on that and certainly get people's attention. One of the things that's super important to me as a fisherman that likes to fish in a lot of different places is access. Just the simple ability to go to a place that I was able to go to for my entire life. Am I going to be able to continue to go that? Well, how much of what is discussed at this place? I heard you say that is one of the pillars is access. How much of the current discussions that have been going on have revolved around just fishing access? And I know we have the whale issue in the Gulf of Mexico. That is an access issue, in my opinion. If you can only idle, you basically can't go there anymore. So how much have we been talking about access?
We spend a significant amount of our time addressing issues like that. You brought up the whale issue. Right whales on the East Coast. I mean, that is it's a good policy that addresses the needs of the whale, but also addresses the needs of our recreational community. We've been leaders in that area. I'm not myself, but my counterpart, Mike Wayne, on the East Coast, has been working with Congress, has been working with industry. We're looking at a variety of technologies. But as you pointed out, it effectively closes fishing if our vessel speed restriction implements policies that would limit our speed limits to 10 miles an hour. We would essentially close fishing offshore to almost the entire East Coast.
Right.
So that's a big issue.
One other aspect of that too. So just on that issue, what I found interesting yesterday was there's discussion in this organization about, well, wait a second, if we are concerned about the whale's well-being, of course,
Sure.
but there's all kinds of technologies now that might help us show that, hey, because of this, and that's something the industry's working on. But on the other hand, like I think of access, where we live pretty remote, and having boat ramps and places to park a boat trailer is a huge issue, and you see attrition there. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that this fund that comes from the excise taxes, that gets collected, and I think it would be really great to explore this more because I'm really interested in it personally. That money gets given right to each of the states on an allocation basis. And a lot of that can go towards, let's say, boat ramp. In Washington State, there was a case where the state just actually bought what was a private boat ramp that wasn't economically viable anymore. And that's where that money's going. And that comes right out of fishermen's pockets when they buy gear. And so connecting that loop is really important.
Yeah.
Tom, one of the biggest issues we have
and that's a self-imposed.
I was just going to add that one of the biggest issues we have on the West Coast here, specifically California, is this 30 by 30 movement right now that really from a state standpoint, 30 by 30 is a global initiative that looks at protecting marine areas as to conserve and enhance biodiversity. I mean, obviously there's a loss of biodiversity worldwide and it's a problem, but the state of California's interpretation of addressing this and calculating and preserving 30% of their shoreline is their interpretation is it's not protected unless it's closed to fishing. Well, that is a real challenge for us that we work closely through the regulatory process that we believe is the most transparent and inclusive in the world under the Magnuson-Stevens Act, where our councils meet across the nation to develop fishing rules specific to good science and a public process. This process that's in place in California is just a categorical exclusion to fishing. And it's a real threat. It's got a potential. Right now, we're at about 16% of the goal. So they're going to be looking for an additional 14% of the total shoreline in California to fall under this category of durably protected. And we're working with them closely, but advocating for the issues that really affect biodiversity. Stormwater runoff is a huge one here in California. Right. That we believe is really the biggest challenge they face. When it rains down here, they tell people not to go surfing because the water's toxic. So addressing the real issues and using a science-based approach is really critical for us and for ASA.
It's really interesting. The tax issue is something that I hadn't really thought about online sales and where does that tax money go? Because as we've discussed before, this excise tax is a self-imposed tax from fishermen that we chose to pay this extra money, and this money would be distributed to all kinds of things, boat ramp, access, I'm sure law enforcement, I don't know, a whole host of things that ensure that we can continue to fish. It's a great success story. But I never thought about how Amazon could affect that. And maybe if a lot of people in Florida are buying tackle and other things from another state and that money is not being returned to Florida, that's a real issue. I never thought about that.
Well, just on that point, it's been really interesting for me learning about the excise tax. We pay it. It's supposed to be a consumer tax, but it's collected from the producers, the industry, the manufacturers. And it really isn't state to state. The real issue that Larry was getting at was that within the U.S., everybody's pretty good at identifying when a tax is due and collecting it. It doesn't matter if I'm based in Washington and sell to you in Tennessee. There's a sellable point there that's identifiable tax issue. The problem, and they are trying to come up with a term, yesterday they were calling it slippage, meaning if a foreign company has a website as an e-commerce site, and a person in the U.S. buys from that foreign company's website directly and they ship directly to the consumer, they're bypassing and not having to charge or pay that excise tax. People will pick on Amazon a lot, but to me, it's like, I know a bunch of guys up by me there's this pretty neat guy in Japan that has a tackle shop and he has an e-commerce site. You can go on his site, has English translation, and buy these really cool Japanese fishing things. I'm guessing that he's not calling the IRS to say, hey, how can I give you my tax that I'm supposed to give you, right? So there's a lot of missed money there that should go right to these issues.
But on the Amazon front, Amazon is going to be, they're going to be paying the tax, right?
It depends. That's something we're trying to understand. And to Larry's point yesterday, we talked about that. It's like when this tax was concepted and adopted, there was no such thing as any e-commerce, right? And so it needs to be updated because Amazon really just serves as they never really actually make or produce possess or sell anything. So really the obligation is on the first person that's selling it in the US, whether that's at a distribution level or wholesale or retail. There's very complex equations to figure out what the tax due is. But Amazon it's a tough one to figure.
The challenge is that this, we have a law that's been in place for a long time on this, and it didn't address e-commerce. So we're trying to play catch up, and who's responsible for that, and that's where ASA has been working closely with Congress and other folks to adapt this new e-commerce platform to the sport fish restoration that's necessary, and
Very interesting. Yeah, that could be a whole show in itself, to learn about that and see, I guess then it comes back to anglers of like, there are more responsible ways of buying things than others. I would assume if you're interested in contributing that tax to, the resource. So,
Well, and Tom, an interesting side point on that, our local CCA chapter up in the Columbia River Gorge, it's part of the Oregon state chapter. We discussed this at a meeting a couple months ago, and there was these issues in Oregon that a lot of the anglers on the Columbia River have been concerned about. And I actually asked the question of the chairman. I said, well, do we know as a group here what the state of Oregon is using the funds they get out of that program for? And most people in the room didn't even know there was that program. So I think and this is relevant to our segment of your podcast, the Anglers United. Let's as anglers that participate in our local CCA chapters, for example, or whatever that might be, Puget Sound anglers or whatever you have there, ask that question, and then as a group, get a hold of our state legislators to say, hey, or the Fish and Wildlife Department, say, can you tell us the funds you got this year from this federal excise tax program and what they went to? And maybe be part of deciding at the state level. The more local you work, the more effect you can have. But these issues we're talking about are federal programs that affect local anglers in their waters. And I think we can probably help educate anglers like us in their community on how to be part of asking those questions and be knowledgeable and aware of the way those monies are being spent.
Sure. And that comes to solutions. And that's what I like, is like, it's one thing to raise awareness. It's one thing to talk, to complain, to point out injustices or threats. It's another thing to come together and really work towards solutions. And that's what, I'm the most interested in. And so in that regard, when you have all of these people from all of these different areas, different councils, different things that they're representing, and obviously different problems, even in that summit that's going on there, how successful are we at people coming together and deciding that it's better to push from one side, as you put it, than we're all pulling on the same end of the rope?
Well, I think we got a lot of work to do. I think Tom, there's a lot of personalities in our industry, and there's a lot of different approaches that have taken, and I think there's some platforms that you can look to that have been successful. But Russ Dunn, there's a national meeting. Russ Dunn is the NOAA recreational manager for the nation. And at when I first came on, I attended the meeting, and Russ Dunn described the recreational fishing industry as a circular firing squad. And, to a certain extent, he was right. But I can't think of anything more important than, finding the 7 out of 10 issues that we all agree on and collectively advocating for those issues. And I think that Keep America Fishing does a good job of giving us a platform. Again, we've got a lot of work to do, and I think we've got to find a way and appreciate this opportunity to even just highlight it to your listeners. But at the end of the day, recreational fishing is critical to the economy, to the social, to our communities, and we've got to find a way to make sure that we've got a voice at the table, and we're listened to and taken seriously. And when I left, I think I shared with you a bit ago that I was with the state of Washington for a lot of years, and I didn't leave because I didn't believe in the agency, but I left because I thought there was a huge opportunity for me to be an advocate for this exact issue. And that's where I'm focused on and addressing the issues, but also trying to find a way to align us to affect change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very interesting. So when you're talking about these things, Tom, you outlined, I have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I don't know, maybe 14, 15, and then some smaller issues. So 15 issues. In a few days, I mean, you could sit there and talk about the tax issue for 2 days. You could talk about lead fishing tackle and what we're going to do, imports, PFAS, salmon, the 30 by 30, the rockfish. You could end up talking about these for many days. How does the meeting decide, okay, this is settled and it's time to move on? How do you get to that point? Is it amount of time that you allot to these discussions or what?
Well, yeah, these are ongoing discussions. These have been going on with our membership. I mean, my engagement in the list that Tom shared on the West Coast, you know, I am engaged in salmon conversations about the preseason planning process, the in-season management, you know, the postseason roundup, you know, evaluation of how we did for the year, and that takes place every year. Essentially, salmon are unique that it's complicated management, but it also is really important that we're involved in understanding what opportunities we might have coming up. Many of the stocks of salmon are listed under the Endangered Species Act, so we navigate this complex regulatory process of identifying opportunities that give access to abundant harvestable stocks while protecting weak or ESA listed stocks. That's for salmon. So that it just goes on year round, and really it's an update to members. It might be a call to action. For instance, some of the red snapper conversations are happening. It might be a Keep America Fishing advocacy, you know, action alert that folks can go to. But we also can come away with it with, you know, some resolutions or some after action direction to either staff, or maybe it's a letter, or maybe it's, you know, a position statement. But, you know, these are the, I mean, and again, as you mentioned, there's 5 issues that I brought up on the West Coast that are, you know, that potentially could have a significant impact on our members and the community in general.
When Larry, you, as a member of your committee now, but then also as an industry person, that work actually happens all year round. So my take on this particular summit is it's a place where a lot of cross-pollination can happen. You know, at these sit-downs, you're sitting next to somebody you may not have ever met before that's in the same industry, that has something relevant that generates ideas, right? And then there's also the official business part of the meeting, to where it's the actual resolutions are adopted and the business is done. And that's always nice to do in person, I think. But the work that, you know, Larry and his crew do is year round. I mean, these issues are so complex that it doesn't just happen in one day, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly happy to know that that's all going on there, and that anglers like me and that are involved in the industry, but anglers that are just your basic once a year kind of person are being represented, and their interests are being represented, and the interest being mostly that you can continue fishing, right? Access, I think, is number one, and then there are all these other things. Well, access also, that's hand in hand with the tax issue, right? The access comes with money, and that is funded by that tax. So everything comes after that, I think, in my opinion. But I'm glad to know that you guys are there. If people are interested in learning more about ASA, about what that work is, about this summit, I'm assuming that the ASA website is the best place to go?
Absolutely. Yep.
And that is just ASA.com?
American Sportfishing Association.
Okay,
I think if you just Google that,
AmericanSportFishingAssociation.com. We'll put that in the show notes. And then if people, do regular anglers support the ASA?
Absolutely.
Or is it only manufacturers? And if so, how do people show their support financially or otherwise?
I mean, you can donate to the Keep America Fishing effort. There's a link on the website. You can certainly join ASA. There's an individual opportunity to join ASA, but it's and all that information is available on our website.
Okay, cool. And so you have the rest of the day with some meetings, and is this when the business is done today?
We're going to wrap up tomorrow morning. Folks will be flying back to their locations all across the nation, and we'll conclude our Sport Fishing Summit.
Great. Well, Tom and I are going to continue this series, Anglers Unite series, on the podcast, and we're going to tackle some other issues. Tom, in your opinion, what would be 6 of the most important issues that you think we could bring awareness to and unite anglers around a cause that we could actually make a difference?
You know, you and I kind of identified 6 rough basic issues: 2 in the Southeast, 2 in the Northeast, 2 in the West Coast, or I think there was 1 or 2 inland sort of issues. And I think in light of what, I've learned this week, it'd be great for us to have that conversation about, okay, well, like you said, it's fun to talk about the issue, but how do we make resolutions and how do we make progress?
Exactly.
And so I think this process that I've experienced here this week is great to keep in mind in light of the conversations we're going to have. So we identified on the West Coast, basically the salmon issue, which could be its own whole 12-part series, but the salmon issue. Mm-hmm. And I think parts of that will be of interest to your Southeast listeners who may travel to Alaska or the Northwest once in a while to salmon fish. They certainly would like to be able to do that in the future. And then we have this issue in California specifically about this 30 by 30 initiative, and then also the nearshore rockfish issue. So those are the 2 West Coast issues I'd like to focus on for the West Coast. And we talked about this red snapper issue, talked about a couple issues in the Northeast.
Okay. Well, probably more issues are going to become evident just because that's what always seems to happen.
And I guess, Tom, I just realized that I think this tying together this excise tax, the fund, the way it gets distributed and how it's used, and my experience at our local CCA meeting about that, I think that'd be really great to try to set, your listeners out to say, hey, when you go to these meetings, let's ask these questions and learn. Like if we can protect one boat ramp in somebody's fishery through this funding, I think that's a huge win. It'd be great for everybody to know that.
For sure. Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys coming and giving us an update of what's going on there. It's certainly a very important meeting as it applies to anybody that likes to fish, and certainly those that make a living at it. That it's a very, very important meeting, and I appreciate you guys up there working for us, and looking forward to hearing some resolutions and continuing this series. We're planning on putting out about 1 a month to cover these issues. But Larry and Tom, thank you very much for coming. And if you want to check out Tom's stuff, Burnewiin.com, they make quick change parts for your boat, which make your boat customized perfectly to you. You've seen us use the rod holders, the fillet tables. There's all kinds of awesome stuff. Go to Burnewiin.com. And Larry, is there any way we can send people your way?
Absolutely. American Sportfishing Association. Check us out on the web. Keep an eye on Keep America Fishing for action alerts that are call to action for issues that are important to our industry. But appreciate the opportunity here.
You bet. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the time today.
See you.
All right. Good luck with the rest of the meeting. See you guys.